need it. That song was perfect, Lynn. Absolutely perfect. Last month, there was I don't know if you've ever heard of Joshua Harris. He is an author, a Christian author, who wrote a book in the 1990s, which actually changed the dating scene in the Christian world, and it was really a part of the whole purity movement that happened in the Christian world. He got married, he has a wife and 3 children, but in 2016, he issued a letter saying that, I understand that my book probably offended some people, as any Christian book would do. And for that, he apologized. That's fine. And then last month, in July, he issued a statement saying that he was separating from his wife. That was followed by, I am divorcing my wife, which was followed by, I am denouncing Christianity. And that was a really hard hit. That's whenever someone denounces something that is so important and you know is life-giving, it hits you hard. So you think, what caused this? What brought all this about? And I was looking at a few things. He does a few TED Talks now. I'm not doing something right here. He does a few TED Talks. And one of his TED Talks, he calls it Exposed. And he's saying that now he recognizes that his statements and some things in his book were closed-minded and were not inclusive of everyone, and now he wants to do that. He also recognizes that in his time, when he was in high school and then in university, he felt odd. He didn't feel that he fit in because of his Christian values. So when he was mixing with non-Christians, he felt, this is odd, because they're partying, they're having this lifestyle, and I'm the one who's staying pure and staying and obeying God, and this is odd, and there's an otherness that I don't understand. But even as I listen to him now, every statement that he makes starts with I. In his TED Talk, he says, I was wrong in what I believed, but I now have the strength to say that I was wrong, and there is strength in saying that you're wrong. But I never hear him talk about community. I never hear him talk about anyone else in his story, just his own journey. And I wonder how much of his decision to denounce Christianity has to do with the fact that his marriage didn't work out, and everything that he based his book on and started his Christian walk on, in his mind, is now false. Because we have a basic, though it is inaccurate, belief that if we do what is right, good things will happen to us. Even though we know that's not the case, we still have an innate sense that says, if I don't do what I'm not supposed to do, my marriage will work out, my kids will grow up, and they will follow God. I will have a job, I will have money, I will be secure, but it doesn't work out that way. After that, I think it was last year, a friend of mine, we were studying a Bible study called Uninvited by Lisa Turkhurst. And it's a pretty good study. It's just looking at rejection and the ways that we feel, particularly as women, things that happen to us in life, and what it's like to live feeling unloved or unwanted in various situations. And in one particular chapter, she said something, and it sounded like a very pat, perfect Christianese answer to me. And I looked at the back of the book, and I was reading about her bio, and it said, she said, oh, I've married my best friend, and I have 3 kids, and this and that. And I thought, well, of course you did. It was just so perfect. And then later on, I was Googling something with her, and she put out a statement that said, after 20-something years of marriage, I am divorcing my husband for unfaithfulness, and I am releasing him to God. I was worried that I could not continue in ministry because I am going through this, but I have decided that God says I am still valuable and I can still be used. So what's the difference? How did one person end up totally denouncing everything because of the difficulty that they went through, and the other person says, wow, not only is this difficult and hard, I'm going to keep ministering. And she now has a whole new Bible study called It's Not Supposed to Be This Way. And she talks about how she wanted to minister. She wanted to be someone who ministered for God. And she had her set plan with her family and with this, but that wasn't the way it worked. And this is not the way it's supposed to be. I want to minister, but I want to minister from a very financially secure position. I want to minister when I have a husband who loves me and understands me. I want to minister with children who obey God and are excited about God and come to church every week. Most of us don't have that. But what is it that causes some to denounce everything and others to cling more to God? Now, in the end, with her story, she continued to pray and with her relationship and everything. During the middle of all of this, she ended up getting breast cancer. And it was like she was just getting hit left, right, and center. In the end, through, I think it was a year or so, but whatever the time period was, she ended up, yes, reconciling with her husband. But that wasn't the point, because she had already released it to God, and she had already said to God, still use me, before she had any clue how it would turn out. Today I just want to spend a little bit of time on Peter, one of my favorite disciples, probably because he, like me, spoke too much sometimes. He is sometimes called the foot-shaped disciple because he always had his foot in his mouth. But Peter had it right. He said, when Jesus asked, "Who do people say I am?" The disciples said, "Oh, some people think you're Elijah. Some people think you're John the Baptist." And he said, "Yeah, but I'm not talking about other people. You have to make a decision for yourself. Who do you say that I am?" And what did he say? "You are the Christ." He got it right. He was a star player. He was the captain of the team. He knew what was going on. He was Peter. And then what? Jesus messed up all that celebration plan by saying, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat." You just had a big celebration. You just committed your life to Christ. And now there comes a situation. And Peter, you fast forward to Gethsemane when Jesus is in the garden and he's begging his disciples to pray with him. "Please, pray with me, pray with me." Not just for himself, but more so for them, that their strength may not fail. And he prays. And what happens to the disciples? They fall asleep. They don't understand what's coming. They don't understand that they're about to go through the trial of their life. And the soldiers come and they take Jesus. And imagine Jesus saying to these people, "You see me every day. Every week when I go to synagogue, you see me. But yet you come at night like I'm a robber? You come with clubs like I'm a thief? That's how you come? And all the disciples fled. They left him. But it's interesting because if you look in Luke 22, I think it's 54, it says, Peter followed at a distance. See, Peter loved Jesus and he was committed to Jesus, but at this point, he didn't want to state that he was committed to Jesus. He wanted to follow at a distance. He didn't want to be part of community at that point. Because it's easy to follow Jesus when he's standing up in the boat and he says, "Peace, be still." And it is easy to follow Jesus when he's on the mountain and he feeds 5,000. And it is easy to follow Jesus when he's doing things that we feel, wow, God, that is amazing. You are so awesome. I cannot believe God did that. But when we have no clue what Jesus is doing, why are you standing there? Why don't you change the situation? You're being persecuted. You're going to trial. They're going to kill you, and you're doing nothing? My marriage is falling apart. My children don't follow you. My whatever has happened. And you're doing nothing? How do we then not follow at a distance? But he was still there, which is an important part. He didn't walk away. He was still there. He just couldn't be in the middle of everything. And then the annoying servant girl comes and says, "Hey, weren't you with that man that they just arrested?" And he says, "Oh, no, I wasn't there. No, that wasn't me." And he still stays by the fire and he warms his hands. And then somebody else says, No, I'm pretty sure I saw you. I think I saw you." And he says, "I just told you, I wasn't there. I don't know him." And an hour goes by. I think I felt like it was just 3 in a row where he went, no, just a reaction. But an hour went by, and none of this registered in Peter's mind. None of this brought back to his mind that Jesus said, "You're going to betray me 3 times." Didn't come back to mind. Not in the heat of the moment. And then finally somebody says, No. Your speech betrays you. I recognize you. You are a Galilean. And he knows that he's got to do something because his life is possibly at risk. So he makes an oath and he adds in some words that a follower of Jesus would never say. Just to be clear. Nope. I do not know him. And immediately, he looks up. And what does he see? He locks eyes with Jesus. And I wonder what that look was like. Because you know when your kids do something? You know when you tell your kids not to do something? And you come home and they've done exactly what you told them not to? How do we look at them? Or when that coworker has done whatever, we don't respond well. But Jesus looked at him, and I think he looked at him with compassion and love, not anger. And the reason I think that is because Peter went out and wept bitterly. And you don't do that when someone reacts in anger, usually. There was a remorse for what he had done. There was a change that came over him. And the change was that he recognized that no matter what he did, Jesus was still going to love him. And no matter how far off course he went, Jesus was still going to be there, still going to call him home. But the verse said, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. Now, when you sift wheat, you take its head off, you tear it apart. You're trying to separate the chaff, which is the dust, the garbage part, from the wheat. But Jesus said he wants to sift you like wheat because he already recognized that Peter was wheat. And he said that Satan's goal might be to tear you to pieces through this trial that you're going through. Whatever the trial is, that is what Satan's hoping will tear you apart and be the end of you. But Jesus says, I've prayed for you. And when we read this text, it's funny because when people hear this and they say, when you read this text in church and it says, but Jesus said, I have prayed for you. And people say, amen. And I say, I don't want you to pray for me. I want you to build a hedge around me. And I want you to not let this happen. That's what I want. But that's not how he works. And that's not how the Christian walk works. And it's interesting as we talk to the kids about this and why they say, some people have such faith in God and they'll do anything for God. And how do you get to be like the 3 Hebrew boys that'll step into fire? The only way is through your own experience. That's the only way. And there's no formula for it. I love women's conferences. That's my thing. I could go to a women's conference every week. Amanda too. We could go. And I come away from that so excited and feeling so uplifted and motivated, and I could move mountains. And with the kids, and when I say, hey, we're gonna go to a conference, and I know at the end of this conference they are gonna be just like Bible thumpers. It doesn't happen. Not that they don't enjoy it, not that they don't whatever, but it's a different experience. And for some people, it's doing the community work. It's feeding the homeless or doing these things. That is what motivates them. And that's why we have the body of Christ. So that some can do it this way and some can do it that way. But when we come together, we're doing what God has asked us to do. And when he says, Satan has asked to sift you, as we've talked about several times in lessons and in various stories, it means that God is still in charge, that Satan had to ask permission. And I know we say that, but what does that really mean? That means that this is a guided tour. Because see, if you think I don't like you, and I say, I'm going to blindfold you, and we're going to go for a walk. And we're going to go through some caves, and I don't like you. Are you going to go on that walk? No. But even if you had to go on that walk, what would that walk be like? You don't know what the end of it, you don't know, there might be a cliff, and oops, you have no idea. But if you know that I love you, and I say I'm going to take you on a walk and you're blindfolded. Yep, you might come away with a few bruises and a few scrapes, but there's no way you're going off that cliff. There's no way. And even though we go through trials and we are sifted like wheat, it's a guided tour. And the tour is by someone who is good. And by someone who loves us. And then he says, Peter, when you are converted, when you return, and that part gets me every time. Because he didn't do it yet. but he knew that he was going to return to him. And if someone said to me, as I'm walking down the aisle, Alvin is going to cheat on you. He's going to be this and he's going to be that. But in the end, he'll love you and you'll have a fabulous marriage. Would I do it? No. But Jesus says, you're going to go. You're going to fall down. You're going to mess up. But when you come back, I'm here. And that's an amazing love that we'll never truly understand. And I was reminded of that when Daniela was reading the call to worship scripture of Ephesians 3. That verse had for a very long time confused me, where it says, he prays for strength to understand the height and depth and breadth or something of the love of God. I thought, why do you need strength to understand love? That doesn't make sense, but we do, because this is the way he shows us his love. We need the strength to understand God's love, but it's a love that is so deep and is so steadfast and not changing. And you know, I sometimes speak with some of my male friends when I'm doing something, and I said, you know, as women, the verses that we like and the things that we talk about is how God is love and all of these things. What are you as a man like? And he said, you know, the David verses. I like that God is a warrior and God is, you know, at my battle station, all these things. And I was going through the Psalms, and you know what goes over and over and over in David's psalm? The steadfast love of the Lord. No matter what psalm he's talking about, whether he's saying he's your warrior, or he's your rock, or he's your shepherd, it's always about the steadfast love of the Lord. And I think that that's what David got. So that's why when the child died, or when all these things happened, that's why he could get up and wash his face and wipe his tears. Because he knew that the steadfast love of the Lord would endure over everything else. And that's what we need to get to. And the last part of the verse says, when you return, strengthen your brothers. So that basically means you're not disqualified. It means I still need you and I still want to use you. And I think sometimes when we fail, maybe I'm alone in that, but when we fall down and when we fail, we feel like we're done. How dare I stand up here and tell you anything with all the mess that goes on in my life? But that's what community is. It's sharing the mess. It's living the mess, but encouraging someone else through their mess. And you know, it's amazing. We haven't even been at this church very long, but you know, getting an email from Amanda saying, I hear, you know, tomorrow I'm praying for you, to get a text from Alan, who's wherever he is, Paraguay or something. Like, what? One Sabbath a couple weeks ago, we came here and I don't know, I was really struggling that day, just really struggling. And Faye said, I prayed for your children. What? That's community. And for some reason, whenever we use the word community in church, we mean people outside of church. But there's community in church. And when we can love and appreciate the sense of community here, well, who wouldn't want to join this community? You know, it's funny. When we first started coming, I think it was last year, I remember Camille coming up and asking us to pray for Noah. I didn't know who Noah was. And I went home and said, okay, guys, we got to pray for Noah. And they said, who's Noah? I don't know, but we're praying for him. Him? That's what I said. And we prayed for him. We didn't know he was a her. But we prayed. And when the kids said, why are we praying for Noah? I don't know. But we got to pray. And when we see Noah now, we have a stake in that. We have a part in that. And when Noah is 16, if she misbehaves, don't you think I'm not going to be saying a few words? She may not know who I am, but I have a stake in her life. And you have a stake in my life. And if you see me doing something wrong, you better pull me up too. But we have to do it in love. We have to do it the same way that Jesus did when he looked at Peter and said, I'm still here. The title of this sermon is Exchange Zone. And a couple weeks ago, we were at, I think it's CYSA, whatever it is, the sports day that they have for various churches, and they did a relay race. And Avery likes to run track. She was running for Mississauga. And so we ran, and we meaning her, ran. And the team didn't really do so well for various reasons. But it really struck me that there's a zone, and it's called the exchange zone. And anybody can run in this race. And we had some really good runners who could come first place in the 400 and the 200 and the 100. But when it came to the relay, we didn't do so well. But you see, anybody can run an individual race. But the exchange zone is 20 meters. And in that zone, that's the time limit you have to pass the baton to the next person. This is the best baton I could come up with. When you pass the baton on to the next person. 20 meters, a very limited time. But you can be a wonderful individual runner, but if you can't receive, or if you can't give, you're out. And it strikes me that this church is an exchange zone. Because this is where we interact. We live our lives, we go to work, we go on business trips, we're with our families, we're with our friends, but here is where we exchange and interact. And when we come here, sometimes there's someone, as you prayed, sometimes there's someone who is terrified to open that email this week, who is terrified to pick up their phone when they see that it's the doctor calling. And that person might be standing there like this, saying, can you take it? Can you help me? And the question is, are we too busy? Do we just want to pass by? Or will we take the time to stop and say, is everything okay? Can I pray with you? We were at another church, and I said to someone, we're just talking, whatever, and I said, oh, are you okay? She said, yep. I said, you all right? Yep. I said, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't need to know what's going on, but we're going to pray about it. So we went over to the side, and this woman just started bawling like, I still don't know what happened, but oh my goodness, whatever it is, it was a big thing in her life. But there are people every week who are reaching out. And are we doing it? Are we seeing them? But on the other hand, we have to be willing to give too. Lisa Turkhurst, the woman that I spoke of, who was talking about her husband who had had an affair. She said, there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. And some things you keep private because it's none of anyone's business. And she said, I have told you that the details are, the basic story is that my husband had an affair, and that's it. But interestingly enough, when you speak with him, he says, the fact that she said that publicly made me wake up. That is what changed him. But she said there's other things that you keep private. You don't need to know any of the details. And we don't need to share details. But sometimes we want to be secretive. And when you're secretive, it's because you want to hide something. When you don't want someone to know who you really are or what you're really going through. And the only result of that is that you go through it alone. And then it's suddenly like Joshua, and again, I don't know his story, I'm just from observation, but then it's something like that all of a sudden, out of the blue, you just denounce your Christianity and nobody knows why. But an exchange zone requires a taking and a giving. And we have to be willing to be vulnerable. That is the most vulnerable part of the race. And it's interesting that when you're running the race, there's a moment when you have to run side by side almost. You have to run in the same lane together. And the U.S. team was the strongest team for several years. And everybody knew at the Olympics in Athens that they were going to win. Everything on paper said, this is the best team. Every single runner in there was the best in the sport, best in the world. This was an easy race. But they lost. And it's interesting when you look at it and you see Marion Jones, and she's coming in, but she's exhausted because she had been doing long jump the day before, and she'd jumped like 11 jumps or something crazy. She was more tired, so she couldn't get the speed up, and you can see her calling to the person, I won't make it, I need you to slow down. But the person who takes the baton typically starts running before they get there, and they weren't paying attention and didn't realize that she couldn't keep up. And they couldn't get the exchange right. And sometimes we need to slow down. And sometimes we need to run alongside someone and recognize that maybe they can't keep up. But it's not that we need to go down to their level, but it's that they're at a different level. And if they are exhausted, then you help them and you strengthen them. And when you are exhausted, say you're exhausted and allow someone else the blessing to be a blessing to you too. Strengthen your brothers. It's amazing in this church, there's so much talent, so much that we have learned just from being here, just from a Sabbath school discussion, even Isabel teaching the boundaries. I mean, that's an amazing study. The benefit of that. But we want to say, I don't have anything to offer, or what I have to offer isn't enough. But Christ said to Peter, who denied him, before he denied him, strengthen your brothers. Interesting that after Jesus told Peter that, Simon Peter, after he told him that, Peter said, oh, see, Jesus, you must not know who I am. Because even if all these people deny you, I'm not going to. Because I got this down. I just told you, I know you're the Christ. I got this down. But he didn't have it down. Because he did fall. But interesting, because it meant that God knew, that Jesus knew, in allowing Peter to go through that trial, that it would get that arrogance out of him. And when God says yes to Satan, that yes, you can sift this person, it's to get something out of us. It's to squeeze that part out and yes, separate the chaff from the wheat. But it's difficult to ask in that moment, what am I supposed to learn here, God? I don't like this. This is not comfortable. But there's a purpose to it. And the hard part is we may not even ever find out the purpose of it. But there is a purpose because it's a guided tour by someone who loves you and someone who is good. I was debating if your song was an amazing song, The Prodigal Son. And I was thinking about that story, and should I include it, should I not include it? We're talking about Peter, or, too many people. But you sang it, so. But interesting that, there's a lot of the stories in the Bible, they're stories that were well known. And what Jesus did is he took a little bit of it, and he changed it sometimes. Also, some of these stories are in other religions, and they're a little bit different. And it's interesting because in Jewish culture, there's a story similar to that says the father was the son had left home, and he said, I'm going to go to my father. But when he got to his father said, you left community, and for the sake of community, I leave you. You chose not to be part of this, and so now I choose not to let you be part of this. But that is not the Christian story, and that is not how Jesus portrayed his father. This is a father who did the most undignified thing a Jewish man could do, which is to gird up his robe and run. Did you ever hear that a gentleman will never run? But God is portrayed as the one who runs. When he sees us coming, he runs. And it doesn't matter what we've done. There was I went down by the lake this week, and there's a monument, I guess, for the Terry Fox Run. And it has a Burlington marker, and it says, even if I don't finish, we need others to continue. It's just got to keep going without me. And each of us is somewhat on an individual race. But our individual race is not as important as the whole relay. And I tell you, if at the end of this, we go to hand off the baton and there's no one there, even if you were the fastest runner, even if you memorized the most scripture, even if you could preach the best sermon, you failed. Because we have to be able to pass it on. And we have to be able to strengthen our brothers and sisters. And it's in the strengthening that we also become strong ourselves. Sometimes we think that we have to wait until we got it all together. Because I can't do a study now, I can't whatever now, but Jesus didn't tell Peter he had to do anything before. And the father of the prodigal son said, here's my ring. You can now sign on my behalf. You can speak on my behalf. He didn't say, hold up, we need to go through some house rules first. So the question is, are you willing to enter the exchange zone? Are you willing to stretch out and pass on to someone else? And are you willing to reach back and to receive what someone else has to offer? I just learned that our closing hymn, Blessed Be the Tide, comes from I probably won't have it right, but I know if I ask you to come up and talk, you're not going to. But it was someone who went on a mission trip, and when they went to minister, they enjoyed the fellowship so much that even when their term was over, they stayed. Because the community was so strong. So this community that we have is our community. We need to take care of it. And we need to remember that whatever trials and challenges that we go through, it's only because God is trying to show us His love, and that His love will never fail us. So I hope that as Jesus has His baton, and He reaches it out to you, that you will take the baton and strengthen your brothers.